President Biden's just passed infrastructure bill contains $17 billion to upgrade the nation's ports and strengthen supply chains. But the billion-dollar question is whether the money is going to do anything to ease the crippling supply chain crunch and logjam in the near term, because the situation is getting worse, not better, and according to a new report from RBC. Let's talk with one of the authors of that report, Michael Tran of RBC. Michael, it's good to have you on. 17 billion, you know, DC likes to throw money at the problem. That's fine, except by the time that money goes through the system and people fight and argue over how to implement it, and then it's finally implemented, I'll probably be a grandfather. Is there anything that, and hopefully that won't be soon, is there anything in the near term that's going to fix this other than just time?
Right. Brian, it's such a great question. I mean, look, infrastructure plan, you know, it's also been a month since Biden implemented the call to arms, where he said all these ports, you know, Port of LA, Long Beach, needs to operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But at this point, we think a lot of it is really political theater, political grandstanding, because, you know, we have to get all the gifts under the Christmas tree ahead of Christmas, right? And we only have a short 6 weeks before we do that. So it gave him really a chance to look presidential. But to your point, it's ultimately just time. I think what's really important here is, from our analysis, which is done by a team called Digital Intelligence Strategy, where we effectively look at macro trends powered by big data, we try to tackle the supply chain issue by looking at geospatial analytics. And what we're seeing is it's now taking about 7.7 days for a single ship to move through the Port of LA and Long Beach and out the other side. And this compares to a month ago when that number was about 6.4 days. And, you know, pre-supply chain issues, that number took about 3.6 days. So what we're seeing is these times are really doubling versus historically normal levels. And we're all using big data, data science to be able to really quantify the previously unquantifiable, Brian.
Really interesting stuff. By the way, I mean, political theater, Michael, I mean, you got to say you're doing something, right? It's like 130 billion to, quote, reopen schools, when most of the money is not going to be spent for years. But you got to try to convince people you're doing something. This number on this time of turnaround you did is really, really important. Now, these are huge ships, the biggest in the world, that come into LA and Long Beach. I was at the Port of Charleston earlier this year. They'll do a mid-sized ship in 2 days. You know, 2 to 4 for the larger ones. So think about that. Nearly 8 days to get a ship in, unloaded, and loaded and out. I mean, how bad could this get? And why do you think it's not getting better, Michael?
Right. So, Brian, this is a great question. So what we do, and when I say we're using big data to be able to quantify some of these metrics, because it's really one thing to look into or take an aerial shot of the Port of LA and Long Beach and say, holy cow, there's a lot of ships in that backlog. But it's another way to really quantify it. So what we do here is we effectively look at 3 metrics. Now, number one is we're able to quantify the labor shortage to a degree by looking at foot traffic along the Port of LA and Long Beach on shore. How many workers are there? And we estimate right now that there's probably about a 30% labor shortage. Now, the second thing that we're able to do is we're able to use geospatial analytics to draw a geofence around the waterborne part of the port. And so effectively, we draw a boundary around the port, and we're able to then use AIS, so transponders on these ships, to measure when these ships are entering our boundary and when they're exiting our boundary. And that's how we're able to really do the math. And like I said, right now, our number is showing 7.7 days to turn around the ship.